Hello and warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest today, Mr. Paul Moore. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well. And you?
I am doing fabulous. As everyone knows, this is the highlight of my day, having conversations with individuals that I've often just met or met through somebody, which we met through a connection, because Calgary is 1 degree of seperation, biggest small town ever.
Yeah,
my favorite thing
true.
I love to say. And we had a bit of a pre-chat yesterday, and hitchhiking, you're the author. There's so many things I could explain I'm not going to read your whole bio, but the reason we got connected, yes. I was really curious, as everyone knows I am, about a book that you wrote called Hitchhiking Through Management. I like the name. It caught my attention. As anyone knows my journey, I've been focusing so much on my own evolution as a leader, as a manager, as a human being, kind of working in teams around curiosity and all the things that go with that. So this immediately caught my eye. So without further ado, and maybe not doing the whole life story, you wrote a book. How did this come to be, Paul?
Well, that is a question that a lot of people ask me, because anybody who has known me in my life, I started as a very technical person. In fact, my undergrad degree is a degree in mathematics, which immediately spells boring. I mean, you can't help yourself.
It immediately says people skills, doesn't it, Paul?
That's what it says, yeah. And and writing has always been something that I could do, but it was something that was not natural to me. So, however, talking, I can talk. And that is one of those things is in management, you're always trying to motivate, you're always trying to coach your people. And generally I would question them about an issue or concern, and then if they had done something wrong, or I would say, well, it's if it's not written, it's not real. And that ended up being Moore's first law, because I said it so many times. People said, Paul, you should really make these laws that you always sort of coach us with. So it was an evolution in my management life. It grew not just from me pontificating. It came from interaction with people in my groups, peers and outsiders. Just thought it was really cool. Now the name hitchhiking, I am a child of the 60s. I am, a baby boomer, and Hitchhiker's Guide Through the Galaxy is one of those great books that was kind of neat. And management is a journey, and sometimes people do need to get picked up and helped. And so that was the whole premise. I thought this is I like the title, and it does actually have a deeper meaning than just being witty and fun. So
I love it. And it's a great, I'm looking at it right now. It's on Amazon.ca if you want to check it out, probably a few other platforms. I love the cover. I love the way it's illustrated. You've checked a bunch of boxes that kind of make me even more curious. Yeah. How long were you formally in management? Is it one of those, like, when did all of a sudden I was quote unquote found myself managing people as a mathematician?
So I started relatively early. I wanted to get into management. I was in my 20s. So well over 40 years ago. Nice. Actually, it was really interesting because the company that I was involved in or was working for was HP, Hewlett Packard. And they had a very, very formal process, engineering kind of company. And when you were going through the interviews for management, they love to ask you questions, different kind of questions, which were some were very interesting. Some were relatively boring. Mine was an interesting one. Not exciting, but that made me think, and I've always kept it with me. And that is, what is the most costly or most money you're going to spend on the company's behalf? So what's the decision you're going to make that is the most expensive? And
that is an interesting question. That makes me immediately kind of step back, and I'd have to ponder that.
Yeah. And you go, okay, now I kind of fumbled with it a little bit because I was young, but they basically helped me, and they said, it's hiring a person. Hewlett Packard had analyzed that it was a $250,000 investment. So for every person you hired as a manager, that was $250,000 you were investing in the company's funds. By far one of the largest amounts, because you think about expense report, they'll analyze you for a $5 coffee, but you can make a $250,000 decision for hiring people. So that actually stuck through my whole career. It's a really important thing, hiring people, how much money you're investing, and that decision. So getting to know the people.
Do you find that a lot of times in organizations, I appreciate, HP, and if you like the history of the evolution of technology, they were such a huge player, kind of quote unquote back in the day.
Oh yeah.
You don't hear their name in the same way now. And there's other bigger tech companies, but they were those tech companies of that era that were doing the bleeding edge work. Do you find with some of the other companies you've worked with over the years that there just wasn't a knowledge and awareness or even a respect of anywhere close to that number? Like that's got some weight to it when you say it out loud. And, hiring is the most expensive thing you ever do. And it kind of often stops there. No one ever really quantifies it to really give it the weight that I think it deserves.
And I agree with you there. And I've never heard it quantified again, but other companies that I've worked with will generally say, you realize that you're going to be onboarded, and we really don't expect you to be productive until closing in on year 2. I mean, first year is training, second year is getting your footing, third year, you're actually coming productive to us. So we're going to sink 2 years into you. If you think of the average cost of a person, sort of, in that $200,000 a year now, I mean, you could even argue it's closer to 400,000 in today's dollars.
250 would probably be a deal, but based on today's numbers in terms of
that's right.
2 years of getting somebody up to speed and the amount of resources it takes, not only for that individual not delivering, quantifiable value, but there's a whole group and a whole kind of host of individuals surrounding them to get them successful. The training, the bringing on board, those people, now their quantifiable numbers are how quickly or how effectively, I shouldn't even say quickly, they're able to bring somebody quote unquote up to speed to be able to deliver value at an organizational level. It gets underestimated, and as hiring it can be pretty fast and loose, and it shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't. And 2 years is absolute minimum. You should really be thinking of a 3 to 5 year horizon. Now you can, change careers in the company for that, but the company needs to really look at that 5-year horizon before it's really been a good decision, I think.
So if you build on that and then you layer on top of it the proper training, like managers don't get a lot of training depending on the size of company. You've got some of these companies like the HPs or the Gs of the world where they have literally universities to train their managers how to be better leaders. Most companies don't have that. That's why books like this are so valuable, because so many people find themselves accidentally in management. I woke up one day and I was in management.
That's true.
And I'm managing a 3 to 5 year resource or cycle of terms of like that product market fit of making sure this individual is a value to organization. How critical though now that next layer to make sure the people that are leading, managing, and supporting them actually got the training to do what they need to do. And I just see that fall down more often than not.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the most interesting things is because my management career spanned, over 30 years, really direct management. What was interesting was every level of management has a different perspective and a different problem. To your point, training is something that is rare, and it's really interesting. So the first hurdle of being a manager, typically you're given that nod is because you were very, very good at your work, your technical work. In my case. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to be a good manager, because if you can do it better than the person you're managing, how do you actually train them? And that's one of the interesting things that I learned, and probably why I was a good fit. Now, I'll go back to a little bit of my history. One of the things that always surprises me, in fact, one of my managers or VPs who had worked with me got the book and read it, and they said, had to phone me up, Paul. I said, Paul, tell me it was a misprint. Were you really a figure skater? I said, yes, I was, and I was a professional for 10 years, and I taught. And it was really interesting. Now, you'd say, how does that have anything to do with the technical world? It doesn't. But what it does do is it makes you appreciate how to coach people, especially if you're I was a very good ice dancer. I was very talented. Some people have no rhythm. It's a fact, and you have to actually try to get into their head to make them, a better dancer, a better performer, something that you could do. So the really, really good skaters who made it to championships were actually not great coaches. They just said, well, just go do it. And then people couldn't. And so management is a lot like that too in our world. I was, really, really good at technical things. I just loved technical things. Some of my people weren't. How do you manage them? How do you do that? that's the direct line. So that's the first transition manager. Second level manager is managing managers. So how now do you manage to coach a manager to manage? That's another problem.
Paul, it's starting to sound like a riddle. It's starting to sound like a riddle.
It really is. And so, management has a career. And then when you get to an executive level, now you're not just managing people, but you're managing perspectives. You're managing outward to organizations. I mean, you're representing it. So there's a whole lot of things. Then they take you to charm school when you're in the executive level. I really struggled with charm school, but I tried.
Finishing school for leaders. I'm curious what your perspective. I was exposed to it was in one of my executive groups years ago. They brought in a speaker. Tom Foster was his name, but he stewarded and really put out there the work that was done by an industrial psychologist named Elliot Jacks, and he talked about the idea of time span. And being one of the number one, success factors for someone in a role based on how far into the future they had to be able to see, act, and manage themselves unattended. And it was kind of level one was that 1 to 2 weeks, very often, very highly technical, but couldn't really see the problem beyond the next couple of days. To then like a level 2, kind of a project manager, to level 3, which was a single system manager. Then level 4, then you'd had a multi-system integrator that was like, how do I make sure HR, finance, legal, it all comes together to meet the CEO's objective, which he or she are looking 5 years out. Hearing you talk, I could hear a little bit of that time span idea of that farther into the future is a very different skill set in terms of what falls underneath that. Any thoughts, or have you kind of bumped into that kind of philosophy along your way?
Oh, absolutely. And I like the way the person you quoted had referred it to in the time span. I actually touch on it in the book.
Oh, fabulous.
But not in that context. I did it a little bit on when you're managing people and when you're setting up goals and objectives. One of the things that you have to think about is in your organization, when you're management, is at what level are you responsible from a company's perspective? Being that the first level is the company has a mission. You produce a mission statement, and then you produce a strategy, and then you produce tactics, and in each level, there's a management level that is dealing with that. Tactics are much more immediate, strategies are usually 1 to 2 years, missions are 3 to 5 years. These are the kinds of things that you kind of use I was using more of the terminology related to how a business is structured and how they say, okay, we need to, make your goals, we need to make your tactics, we need to make your mission statement. And how did that
but where
fit
does
in
it
your
level
role?
where does it connect to that's the most relevant based on that individual, knowing that everybody can't span all of those different tiers?
That is correct. And most management fits in that. So your C-suite is normally all involved in just basically the mission statement, right? Very high level, your next level of executives are really involved about the strategy, the goals, if you will. What are the goals? Strategy, then the goals, and then the tactics. So
that are going to allow you to get your goals, which are going to execute your strategy, which will allow you hopefully 3 to 5 years out, that rocket and it'll intersect and hit farther out on the graph, right?
Right. So if you're a vice president or something like that, or managing people, and you're going through their tactics, you're in the wrong place.
You're too far. Get out of the weeds.
Right.
So we'll work our way through. So give me what are the next couple? And I know there's 10, and they can come in a different order. What are this? So the first one was, if it's not written, it's not what you said
real.
It so eloquently. So if it's not written, it's not real.
If it's not written, it's not real. It's one of my favorites. Most people, and part of the book I've said, well, what was your favorite law? And a lot of people, but everybody goes to that one. They said, oh man, I just used it like 3 times last week with people.
Well, it's so easily, and it has a rhythm to it, it has a flow to it.
Yeah, and everybody, everybody doesn't really like that, but I mean that's kind of fun. That's all about the fact that it's all about understanding and having an agreement upon what you're doing and what you're receiving. And,
well, it's kind of killing assumptions too, right? I assumed you just knew. Well, why would why would I just know?
Why would I?
Because everyone just knows. Well, I've been here 3 months. Why do I? That's the danger of that's a lot of assuming.
Well, it is. And when you are asked to come into a situation to adjudicate, or perhaps even in the situation where I had been a few times where I've had to escalate to our legal departments.
Things get frisky. Things get spicy.
Then they get spicy, and then they go, okay, let me see what exactly was written. And you learn that But even written is not a 100% guarantee because interpretation of the writing can be done at that time. So it's very clear, but you got to have at least somewhere to start with, right? So
if all else fails, go back to the scope. If all else fails, go back to the agreement. If all else fails, go back to what the SOPs were for this kind of specific situation. Right?
Mm-hmm. And it really, and it has, in a number of ways, not just in management, it is so applicable. I mean, those are the kinds of things like one of the areas that I did quote in the book about, if it's not written, is it real, was the fact that my brother and I, in our junior oil company, we were pilots. We became pilots later in our lives, and we flew to the oil fields just because it's a small plane and things like that. It's easy to get to.
My first career was as a pilot, Paul. So we're
So you would obviously you would then be grateful and understand the pilot's checklist. I mean,
I have used that reference many times. I love where you're going with this one.
There is nothing that a pilot, I could have landed 1,000 times, but if you don't think I go through my checklist, which is visual, and I flip my card open and I go through it, then you'd be surprised.
From the early days of doing your walk around on your 172, like you follow, you don't wing it. You don't go, oh, I've done it before, I'll just remember, because it's a life and death situation, arguably every time.
And those are things.
I love me a good checklist, Paul.
And I had an engine failure over Northern Ontario, and I quoted it in the book. 13,000 feet.
Were you flying a single? Were you flying a single?
Single, single. So I was in a what had happened. It was a new engine and 50 hours only on it, and believe it or not, the rocker arm on the intake blew. And basically I blew up the engine. 3 cylinders went dead, and a lot of smoke. So I just power glided down. It was
you said you're at 13,000 feet.
Yeah, 13,000.
You had
northern.
Time. You had time.
I had some time, but
lots of trees up there, though, Paul. Lots of trees up there.
You do know that there's a lot, and I was on the coastline of Lake Superior. So
I grew up flying. I grew up in Quebec. I grew up flying in Ontario.
So I made marathon was 42 nautical miles, and ATC said, "Can you make it?" And all I said is, "I'll try."
Yeah.
But
I think we have to have another other episode about when the proverbial shit hits the proverbial fan.
Oh yeah, it does. But it does make a difference, writing, and that's just a simple version of it, just in real life for other people.
That's such a great example, just to play on that. Like when stress goes up, competency can fall down, right? The high risk, low frequency, that happens so often. You train for it multiple times, but the point of that, like I can go back to but on autopilot, I follow my checklist. Okay, there, I've done everything. Now I can think and deal with my situation. But because you had that checklist, because it was written down, when the stress goes up, you had something to lean back on. And I think, we always, an email can feel like you have an engine failure sometimes when you get the wrong email during the day and you default to stress mode as a human. Having that, like, okay, just go back, just pause, think, breathe, go back to my checklist. You can checklist yourself almost out of any situation. Aviation, I think, epitomizes that.
Yeah, and people would say to me on that situation, well, weren't you afraid? I said, I didn't have time. I was too busy going through my list and following my process and making my calls and do my calculations. And then
you made it to the runway?
I did, actually. It was
that's a good story, man. But that's not often how that story ends.
No, and again, you'd appreciate Northern Ontario, a lot of rock, a lot of hills. And I had to come downwind. I didn't have enough time. I didn't have enough altitude.
Floated all the way down. You were flying a proper circuit.
I was running. I ran in hot, but it was nice because ATC had cleared it, and we had the runway cleared and everything.
Did you get blown right off the end of the runway, or was it a long?
No, actually, it wasn't too bad. But I did. I came in hot, but I was okay with hot. It's
absolutely. And if you got a long enough runway, you can get some of that speed. You can bleed off some of that speed.
Yeah. No. So
good. Anyways, two pilots now talking about. I've never had an engine failure, but I trained for it many, many, many times.
No, it's a nasty business, and we've had a couple, but we could like you say do a whole podcast on pilot and flying and stuff like that. So.
But the value of that. So let's move through our rules here. Like what's number 2, number 3? What comes to mind?
Two, number 1 leads to number 2 in lots of ways, because my number 2, I always used to say when somebody said, "Well, they told me this," well, I said, "Yeah, but they lie. Everybody lies." It's like how do you know a sales rep is lying? Their lips are moving,
They're speaking.
So we got into that. Now it's a little confrontational. It sounds like
it's a bit punchy, but I like it.
But it's meant to be punchy because people will remember that. And I think what I try to do is explain. Look, there's all kinds of levels of lying. You're over exaggerating. You're underestimating things. You get a person who's never done something before, and
You
they come
might
in and they
even be
say,
believing it when you're saying it. Like you're not
you actually might.
yeah,
but
yeah,
we,
yeah.
but as you've
Just
got to,
it should be because of pure ignorance.
yeah, you just kind of like step back, and so we go into that one, and then the third law really talks about the fact that you know it's just a game. Don't take it personally. Too many people cannot sleep at night when they bring home things, and I think you have to just appreciate that a lot of times it's not personal. A lot of times it is business, and if you make it personal, you lose your objectivity. And it's like when we played sports. Um, One of the things I played at a pretty senior level at squash and racquetball in my youth. We used to love when we were like on a weekend competition, my buddy and I, and so we used to love it when your opponent lost his cool bad call or something like that, because then he lost his rhythm and you could really run up 3 or 4 points without even thinking, right? It's a similar thing in life, in management
It
too,
is.
right?
It is.
You just have to be a fairly cool, fairly calm, and so that is really a powerful one. And then if you can't just live with that, you got to at least take the fourth law to heart and say, shit happens, get over it. there,
These
there's
definitely feel like they build on each other, Paul. I can see the ladder that we're climbing here.
right. Like,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like, you've got to expect that life isn't going to always follow that checklist that you want. And there's going to come things, some break-ins. There's going to be things that happen to you, and you've just got to just accept sometimes it was beyond your control and you just got to move on. You got to
Yeah,
learn from
you
things,
don't be a victim.
don't be a victim. And the quicker you can do that, the quicker you can go move forward, I think. So then, so those top four are really, really like, so they start at, and then we start getting into the whole area of, for management, I shifted gears into a little bit more about how do you interact with people. So a lot of the sort of the fifth law starts talking about you gotta be consistent. You got to be consistent with what you're saying to people, how you say things. And the one I gave the best analogy when it was consistent was, I don't know how many times, not a lot, but enough to make me uncomfortable. The worst thing that happens is when you are dealing with promotions and increases in bonuses. HR says, good old HR says, don't tell anybody about what these things, and you're not supposed to. But if you think in a naive way that these aren't going to talk, well,
I've learned that lesson the hard way as well.
right? So you should. So my objective was always, if this information comes out, you were consistent, you treated people fairly, and you could always stand by these. Not, oh, I needed to do these things. So it's not that I rule saying I'm going to publish it, but you have to be aware that you've got to be consistent, treat everybody the same way, treat everybody fairly. If the information comes out, well, you're fine, right? It's
Oh, it's the thing. That's a joke about the truth. What makes the truth easier than lying is that it always stays the same.
there you go.
Lies tend to move around based on the day.
Right? Like so, and how? I mean, I'm not a good liar because I can't keep that much straight. And
So don't even bother in the first place. Yeah.
So don't even bother yourself. Like I always leave my keys in the same place in the house because there's no way, if I don't leave my keys in the house in the same spot in that basket, I'm not finding them. Right? So it's like, so I think it's just better to say the truth. So now once we get there, we're into an area which I really love. And I coined this one because people used to say, I've told my team this and they don't understand. I said, oh, were you communicating to my team? Absolutely. I said, what is communication? What's the definition of communication? And they go, well, I talked to them. I says, actually, I think you were just disseminating. So the sixth law is communicate, don't disseminate.
Yeah,
and that is harder than it looks. And you got to get a lot of I did a sort of an executive study. I put it in the book that there's 3 elements of communicating, which by my definition was a successful transmission of a thought or an idea to somebody else, right? And in that successful transmission, you've got to have 3 components: what I'm thinking, what I'm actually saying, and then what you're hearing. Now,
How you interpreted it. Yeah.
if you overlap those three things, because a lot of times what I think and then what I said isn't even correct, right? Like, so I
Again,
myself, I
start with
myself
you.
have got
Start with you. Start with what you can
right.
control. That is you.
So right.
Yeah,
So I'm first of all, I'm losing 50% anyway at that point. But the study showed that 98% of ideas are not successfully transmitted.
98.
98%.
That's basically all. That's almost.
Yeah, there's
Yeah, yeah.
always a subtle, a small, doesn't have to be major, but there's an error in the transmission of a thought or an idea
Yeah.
from what you're thinking, saying, and then hearing. So you take that to heart, and you've got to really, there are times to disseminate information, sure, but there's times to communicate, and you have to know when you're doing one or the other. So
Well,
that's
there's lots of sayings like, the myth of communication is that it happened. The meaning of your communication is actually the result that it got. There's so many of those little catchy, like almost bumper stickers for a reason, right? Because
Yeah.
what 98% for the fudge factor is plus or minus, it's almost 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important when you learn something to then try to reteach it to somebody, because then you find out really quickly how quick you grasped it or understood your own ability. You're like, oh, I learned it. And then I'm going to stand up and tell someone. And you're like, huh, that sounded very different than what I just heard over there, but that's my interpretation, right?
Yeah, and it really got ground home to me when I used to. One of the things that Suncor, when I worked for Suncor for about 20 years, and we had a great process called MORs, so management once removed, and we would have to have a meeting with the person that was one below you, your manager, and at one point, I had about maybe 130 to 140 of them to do in a year. Well, you can't, and they're 1 hour. So I had to space them out over the year, and I actually started to use them as communication and verification, because I would be transmitting information to my management, and then I'd actually talk about the latest facts and ask them to tell me what they thought of these issues or strategies or what we were doing, and to get their feedback. So I was getting already that once removed to see how well the information was actually getting, sort of relayed through the organization. So
And what did you find? What did you find more often?
Oh,
than
a
not?
lot of
Broken
errors.
telephone?
Oh, a lot of errors.
Broken telephone.
It is the broken telephone, the Chinese whisper. And
Yep.
one of the most interesting things, which I think made me write this book, which is interesting because one of the things that I get as the immediate feedback when I said, "Oh, what do you think of the book?" Almost everybody says it's easy. So I used to think, and I would respond to that, is that a compliment or is that, but,
Yeah.
but
I read some of the reviews on Amazon, and that was very much a theme. Super practical, easy to read, totally easy to understand. Like that was a bit of the themes of the reviews.
and it was like, I'm going, I think I'm going to take that as a compliment. But one of the things, what I learned, I had a boss who used to love to put very highly detailed PowerPoint presentations because he wanted to get everything on one slide. And it was, and I also had some
death, epitome of death by PowerPoint.
right. And I also wanted to explain things that were complex with a lot of modeling and things like that. What I found over my life is it gets completely lost in translation, and it's really, really different.
Yeah.
So simplicity is actually a great thing, and it's also very difficult to achieve. How do you get complex thoughts relate to people with simple, easy, and not to be screwed up words, right? That's where I kind of got to. So so the communication is a huge area, and part of communication, which now comes into the 8th law, is you got to manage by wandering around, right?
Which is very tough, very tricky in some of the new world that we live in,
Yeah.
or even just the size of companies you worked with. There's a lot of people that just weren't in your same office. Like, let's start with, you're in the same office. You work at a Suncor, a TC, somebody. We're in Calgary, and majority of your team is somewhere else. And now you've got teams that nobody's in the office together.
Yeah.
Like that, so that not only there's an us and them kind of thing, like the field staff versus the office staff and the shop team versus the whatever. Now you've got people where the leadership team isn't even in the same city.
Yeah. And it's a really, really big one. And, it was always part of the HP way. I'll tie it back to. That was one of the ones that I gave credit to Dave Packard, Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. Dave was the HR. He was the manager. He was the person that had the terrific people skills. Bill was the highly technical person, and and getting the training from those people, he was quite a person. The HP Way is a great book, and if anybody ever wants to
Oh,
go
I've not read it. That's a good.
go back
I
in
like reading. I
time,
like reading some of those ones that are
yeah,
a snapshot of time, and
and
it's in my opinion, majority of the rules, the majority of it still holds true because humans
oh
are
yeah,
still humans. We haven't changed that much in the last 50
no.
years of modern corporate.
No, and they're good lessons, and I thought that's why it was worth talking about it again. Although like you said, the new world is not within like a close proximity physical, but our technology is improving now, even with
Yep.
podcasts,
Here's
visual.
you and I chatting.
Yeah,
We're in the same city, but we're
right.
having a conversation.
So
That would be great if we were in person,
yeah,
but at the
yeah,
same time, it's still like the upside almost balances off the downside as long as you're very
yeah.
deliberate with your communication.
That is true, and you just learn, things like that. But the biggest one,
It is a new skill, Paul.
it is, and so, but it's still, so it may not be you're wandering around, but you are connecting with people, not necessarily,
I like the word connecting. Yeah.
and I do like it too. And I realized at some points in my career when I was very busy that I wasn't doing enough of it just casually, just saying, how are you doing? How was your weekend, or what's going. I got to a point where when somebody came into my office, I think it was during, well, one of the worst times was when we were merging with, I was in charge of helping Suncor merged with Petro-Canada. It was like a $50 billion, and there was no time for any chit chat. It was get it
Yeah.
done, right?
Get shit done. GSD.
And get shit done, yeah. And it was really sad when somebody said, they come into my office and, they were like, what have I done? Because basically all I was doing was just giving people correction, giving them shit, because I mean, there was just so much going on that it wasn't fun to meet with me because we were only dealing from one crisis to the other. And I thought that is not fun management. I mean, and so you go step back and you say, well, I got to have some time to at least feel like we're humans and understand people because there's a lot of things going on in people's lives in this day and age. And you have to.
And I think even as a leader, being self-aware enough, which is I got like your first four really land very closely to self, in my opinion, the way I understand them. But like even letting your team know, like, hey, I get it. We're in firefighting mode. Like the bullets are firing right now. Me giving me directives and not taking time. This is just the phase we're in. And when we get out of it, that level of self-awareness, because often when you get under that pressure, you don't take the time to even say, hey, by the way, this is what's actually like, this is the current state of affairs, back to don't take it personally.
Yeah. And don't take it personally.
But the more the bullets are firing, the less you create space even for yourself as a leader sometimes to say, whoa, hey, just want to give everybody like a public service announcement. Yeah. Please do not take any of this personally. We're in a mission. Yeah. Give us a couple of months and we'll get back to like, what is a better cadence here. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And having those town halls and those times where you can just sit back and have that brief moment, and that is important. So that kind of is in that whole area of wandering around. It helps that connection, that time to just understand what people are talking about.
Well, connecting is the goal. How you get there is going to differ based on the environment you're in.
Absolutely.
But if you can wander around and create connection, great. If during COVID, my office manager challenged me. She goes, Tyler, you used to go to Toronto to see the team and you'd take them all out for coffee. She goes, you're not doing that anymore. I said, well, it's COVID. And she's like, why don't you just do it virtually? So I actually started booking appointments, but then sending them a coffee card in advance, just as a joke, to say, this is just you and I chatting. Yeah. There's no, because there's, also, the CEO is reaching out to me to talk. Am I in trouble? Which is a weird narrative that we take on. Mm-hmm. And it was the best thing I ever did because I'd start booking them and then they'd send me a coffee card first because it was their turn to buy coffee. Like it created this weird culture. But I got to get challenged by one of my team to just do it electronically, what I used to do physically. And I'd kind of missed the mark because I got wrapped up in whatever COVID, and not to use that as an excuse, but the bullets were firing, were flying in.
No, it's so true. And, it is really, really important that you have those virtual events because you can't. But when you do have the chance to be, the other part of this is when you do have the chance to be physical, actually be present. One of the things I do is every 9 months we had a large outsourcing at Suncor, and a lot of people were in India. We had some in the Philippines. We had Mexico City, even Kentucky. We had them all over. And no matter what trip I took, the ones in India, and it'd be like a 4-city tour because people are in 4 different places. But every one of them, I had at least a half a day carved out that I would actually wander and be introduced. And so I literally wanted to shake everybody's hand that was on the team. And I always made time. I told them in the schedule, we will have a wandering around time where I get to see their workplace, actually talk to them, introduce myself, thank them for their, contributions. And it goes over well. So you can make excuses. Oh, I got to fly in, I got to fly out. I'm so busy.
Yeah.
You
I'm so
lose it,
busy. The cliche answer of the 20th century or the
right?
21st century.
Right. So
Yeah.
so that was really important.
But I really appreciate your filter of it's important, make it important and make it as strategic, because wandering doesn't sound very strategic, but if you understand why you're doing it and you understand who you're doing it for and the potential outcome, it's a lot easier to book it into your calendar.
Yeah, and I think that's how you got to treat it. This is not wasted time in any way, stretch, or form. Because what we are is managing people. We're managing people to get the best out of them. And that involves having to have some information about, they need to know how you think and what drives you. You need to know what drives them. And that's
Hey, I want to I want to pull back up because I made a note here and we kind of skipped
Okay.
past it because I love everything you're saying. The management once removed. So you chatted with your manager, then you had the connection. You were hearing things that were incorrect or not, maybe as you intended. How did then you go back and change your behavior? Did you have a coach? Was it just enough self-awareness to say, hey, clearly my communicate, because there's that frustration of like, shit, that's not what I said.
Yeah.
But that's on you. That's on you. How did you then go back and retool how Paul showed up next time to kind of change that cycle for the next MOR meeting?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, it wasn't specific for them. That question, although some of those things, if I had wanted them to do something, it was misunderstood. You do that correction, but the correction is an interesting area, because if I knew that there was something strategic I was getting done, and I wanted it, I would either have just a meeting with my management team, which I would reclarify this. I've been hearing through my MORs, it would be very open, that this information we were talking about, this strategic initiative, change management, I'll use change management as an example, is going off kilter. This is really what we meant. And your teams are interpreting it this way. Take the time to spend with it. If it was really big enough, you'd also we'd have town halls once a month or once a quarter, right, with the whole team. You would, if it was really important, I would inject it then as well. So, one of my managers always used to say that they always had to tell somebody something 7 times, right? Now, different people say 13, 7, there's all kinds of numbers. The point is it's multiple times before people get it right.
Times.
And I think it was a confirmation. We were a little off course. I need to say it again, and I'm going to emphasize where I think that they're drifting. So that was it was my circle back. So it's,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that was
I had a politician tell me once that, Tyler, the only time your constituents are actually hearing your messages is when they start to get openly annoyed at you. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's good.
And, a politician, she was a multi-year politician and she had a view of it. I was like, and it was very punchy and I like it. I've repeated it multiple times, made me laugh.
Really, have you? Now, communication is a very funny thing, and I do reference it like as, and I had been involved in, I'll use change management because it just came to my head when I said the word. Change management was one of my great successes and in some ways my greatest failure.
Ooh, juicy.
And it was really interesting. So change, in my day, when we needed to do something on a computer, like when in the 80s, we just took the computer down. It didn't matter that 100 people were using it. We just took it down to put a patch in and fix it. And those are, we call them the cowboy years, right?
It's a different world.
Yeah, we didn't need 99.999% availability. Well, now everybody absolutely relies on it. Outages are critical. So change management had to be implemented. And we were, I was sort of in that era and introducing change management into large organizations. And so we wanted to make it so that it was, written so that we could understand, we could troubleshoot if we did something wrong. We had backup procedures and everybody bought in about what was happening to the system, and it was communication. Now, so it sounds very righteous and easy, and it started to go off kilter. And the way I explained it, this is how I learned. I said, when you're in leadership, be careful. You are standing on the top of a hill, and the analogy is you create a ball of snow, and it's in the winter, and you give it some nurture, and you start pushing it down the hill, and it gets a little bigger, and then it starts getting faster. Sooner or later, it's bigger than you, and you can't control it anymore. And so you better be very careful with how you started that trajectory, because you could be looking and saying, "Ooh, I really didn't mean to take out that half a dozen kids on their
Yeah,
toboggans."
it can mow down the villagers. Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And like 10 years later, I was in
Yeah, amplitude and magnification over the
amplitude.
yeah.
And it was really funny because I was there, and there was a very junior technician. I was walking, and some manager who knew me came up to me and said, "Paul, I don't get this. Why is it taking so long? I just have my contractor in, and he can't get his computer, and it's been 3 days." I said, let me just see what's going on." So I went into sort of the technician area in the network group, and kid been maybe 2 years, and he was very diligently explaining how change management worked to me, who 10 years ago implemented it, and how it was a process that he had to do this, and it took a week. And I said, "Listen, kid, I wrote this book on change management, and change management was not designed to, be a hamper to productivity. So it's you be careful, because
Be careful what you create.
you can create, and it can be out of control. So I learned that one a little bit the hard way, but that's that's why you have that.
I don't know about you, Paul. Most of my lessons that actually took hold were learned somehow the hard way.
Yeah. So
now, but I don't learn the right things when I get praised. I learn the right things when I trip and fall.
Well, haven't you ever noticed that when you talk to people, when you say, write a test when you're a kid or something, do you remember the 49 questions you got right? No, you only remember the one you didn't get right, and it burns in your brain and that's life. You always remember what you did wrong. So anyway,
well, and I think you made the comment earlier about having, manager as coach, as mentor, as there's a lot of it's not that, the binary right or wrong. It's like, oh, it could have, if we did it this way, it's all about the outcome. But I think that coaching mindset, which has become a lot more prevalent, or certainly the words that are used, but it is a lot more from a nurturing perspective. And typically, if you're going to coach someone, it's not just praising them for what they did well. It's getting into the messy stuff. That's where coaching actually happens. I love you made the analogy about sport. I do find that coaching is so easy to point at coaching at sport, because you give advice and then you watch it physically either happen or not happen on the field or on the ice or wherever. Where management, there's a much longer cycle. I gave someone, we had a great coaching session. I might wait months now to see that behavior show up. It's just such a different mindset too, in terms of how tangible the physical world is versus behavioral.
Yeah, no, great point. And it is so true. Management can be sometimes feeling like an abyss. It's not like a project where you see the completion. You're correcting behavior. You're hoping that person goes on and grows. And these things are long term. So you really are getting any kind of feedback is usually very limited. So you have to
rely on that.
You have to be prepared for that in management. One of the things I love to say to people, I don't know how many people in my career, you do performance reviews, or you're talking to people that want to have one-on-one with you, and their whole objective is, what will it take for me to be a manager? And you step back and you smile. And the question that I always asked was, why do you want to be a manager? What is it really you're trying to achieve? Is it money? Is it glory? Is it fame? Because I got news for you. None of those things are usually the primary. You better know why you want it. And then don't be disenchanted when you get to that point and it's not what you thought it was going to be. Everybody thinks they're going to have the power. Not really.
Is it so much it doesn't really come down to, extrinsic, I'm going to get praise, I'm going to have power, I'm going to get validation, but it's really intrinsically of I believe in it. I think it fits my North Star of being, the influencer or have positive impact at my organization. It just feels like it's that transition of it's got to come from inside. Because if you're looking for outside, you're probably gonna go home disappointed.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's a certain element of leadership that people do want to lead. They think they've got the kind of the thought, the fortitude to do those kinds of things. That's one element of it, without a doubt. Yeah. But it is about the people that because it's called managing people. I mean, it is about the
Yeah.
people. And Rick
It's not
George,
leading if no one's
no,
following, right? Isn't
right?
that the joke, right?
Rick,
Yeah.
Rick George was a great leader, the CEO of Suncor, and he said it was all about reversing the pyramid. The people that were most important were the frontline people. They're the ones that got the work done. You know,
It feels like that narrative has become more prevalent. I don't think it always is that way, but it's certainly talked about a lot more. It's not cool to talk about it the other way.
no,
Dictatorship, top down, totalitarian approach,
yeah,
Yet we have, governments, large governments that seem to be being run that way, but that's a bigger conversation.
yeah.
There's always a backlash of like act this way, but oh wow, some of the leaders we put on pedestals are acting not that way at all actually
Yeah.
right now in our world.
There is a time though for command and control.
Yep, that's a
And
good point.
we have to take the situation and apply the right management skills. The
Touche.
reason I think about that is that my father-in-law was actually a brigadier general in
Oh,
the Indian
interesting.
Army, and so can you imagine a military operation that dealt with consensus with the troops?
It just
I
wouldn't
want
function.
you to
It
take
wouldn't
that
function.
hill. I don't think I want to. Eh,
It's that, but then that's the problem. I think modern management has borrowed too much from military kind of Roman doctrine on this is how we lead. But you're right; it doesn't work both ways. They're both their own type of style, and you have
yeah,
to have the right tool for the right situation. That's a really
that's
good
right.
observation.
That's true. So
Let's
that's good.
debate it. No, I'm just going to let you. What's the patent? What's George patent? Tell people exactly what you want them to do. Then be surprised how they did it. Get out of the way, but be very clear. We're taking the town because you
That's
know
right.
what? Because tomorrow we're taking the next town. So we
That's
better
right.
get this one out of the way, right? We're
It's
still
just,
doing. Yeah, that's interesting.
but
I
we
get that. I like
cannot
that
do
metaphor.
that in so a lot of corporations, and that's not the same. It's not the same situation.
Yeah.
So anyway, so
The right tool for the right thing. All right, we're at number 9 and 10. What's number
okay.
9?
Well, actually, did I miss? I think I missed one. One is it's called ACE, like the
Oh,
Ace of Spades. ACE is argument, consent, and execute. And that is something I learned from a company called Unger and Bass. Now, I think everybody does it, but the way they called it ACE, you got to be an ACE organization. It was kind of it's a cute acronym.
yeah.
Um,
Good acronyms are easy to teach. Th're easy to remember.
right,
They do
right.
a good job.
Now,
And you're a
most
science guy. You live in a world of 3-letter
yeah, that's
acronyms,
right.
Paul.
That's right. I mean, we do. So it's a good one because you have to actually have that forum for a team in order to get a team to move forward, to have a chance to be heard. Let's argue. Let's put all the ideas on the table. Then we've got to consent. We got to pick one because no matter what, there is probably 5 of them that would work to different degrees depending on the
Mhm.
environment. Um, Success is not having each of the team go 5 different ways because then that's
No.
complete failure. Pick one, and then we've all agreed that that was the best. You might not like it, but this is what we're going to do, and then we execute towards that mission and that one goal. And it's the E that is the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
People can argue. They appear to consent,
Appear. Good. Well said. Well said. Yeah.
and then they go and execute anyway. And so and as a manager, great acronym. Can you actually get the team to do that though? And
Mhm.
understand that they were heard, that for various reasons, political, maybe more information that they didn't know,
Yeah.
this is the way we're going to go, and then execute it the best you possibly can. So that's kind of I heard a saying when I was doing some work with supply chain. Actually, it was supply chain. Surprising that something really good came out of supply chain, but it's true.
Paul,
um,
don't be cynical. Don't be cynical, Paul.
no, I would never be that. Some of my best friends were in supply chain. So, but what was interesting was they said, given perfect information, rational people would make the exact same decision. So if you
Touche.
are, if you've got a situation where 2 people have 2 different opinions or 2 different decisions they're making, perhaps you should take a moment to think, does each of them know all the information?
Yeah.
Have they, because maybe they've got a bias, and I'm not relaying the bias to the other person. This person said some success, they haven't relayed that information. Perfect information is very difficult. And in this world with so much information, it's getting even more complicated
Well, because
to
the illusion is
rationalize
you have it all. Well, I'm going to play a little bit with what you said. Maybe they have a bias. Maybe we all have biases that we treat as truths every day. And I think, I do a lot of work around curiosity. It's like, why am I so bought into this idea? What must I believing to be true? And what would it be like if it was opposite? That takes just that little bit of moment. But when you're under fire or in a rush, you just default to your mode of operation, which is survival. And that's, it's not a bad thing until it is, right? Until all of a sudden 4 people are all like, I'm looking at the elephant from my side and I'm convinced that this is what this elephant is, until nobody's up at 30,000 feet going, hey guys, like it's a herd of elephants.
That's right.
They're about to run over the village.
They're going. So the last two, the last two are in very important. Just because they're 9 and 10 doesn't mean they're not important. The ninth is you got to work to live, not live to work. It's important that you have work-life balance in your life. And again, easier said, and I was guilty of not having work-life balance in many times in my career.
You can speak to it because you know what it's like to do bad.
Been there, done that, not there when when one of my daughters had to be admitted to the hospital because I was away, and that kind of thing.
The things that stick with you over the years, right?
These are moments that make you feel like, did I really have really good? And that also, that situation also leads you to the 10th law, which is family first. Just never forget what we're here for and what we're doing these things for. It is for family. And managing your career doesn't mean you can't manage your life as well. Managing it by being consistent, by working to live, and always having a high priority for your family.
How critical is that to also live it outwardly? Because it's, to live itself, to look at your own hands and go, am I doing this? But, like the empathy for your team members, the empathy for the understanding that so-and-so might need to leave because they got to go pick up their daughter from school. Like I find that a lot of managers sometimes preach it, but don't always practice it when it comes to their team. So I'm hearing what you say is that, you need to take this on yourself as an individual. And as a leader, you have the opportunity to respect that in the people around you, which I think can easily fall off when the bullets are flying. Let's just use the extreme case. Right?
You do. And you do absolutely need to be transparent about it. You've got a responsibility to tell you the reason why. Management has a responsibility to listen to it and acknowledge it and give them the leeway. I've just worked 24 hours. I got to take some time off. I'm just exhausted, those kind of things. In a situation that I was in, I was cross country. I was in the East Coast doing a consulting gig, and my oldest daughter had basically qualified for the A provincials for swimming, and it was the first time. She was like 13, and the swim meet started on Thursday. I arrived in Washington D.C. on Monday and simply announced to the team that don't care where we are in the project, Wednesday night
I'm going to my daughter's swim meet.
Right, I'm going.
That sends a powerful message. That sends such a powerful message to your team, though.
But they were so receptive to that, right?
Hey, guess what, guys? Paul's also human.
Yeah, that's right.
It's what it says, right? It's what it does. It says.
I am going there because this is the first time, and this is important. I don't get first times over again. So, you
don't.
But
I think that signaling that, living it, and announcing it, and being really transparent about it, I think that's so critical. Like that amplitude that you have as a leader, you just amplified a message that you wanted them to know. Like practice what you preach. Actions speak louder than words. All those cliches, they're all true, Paul. They're all true.
Yeah, they really.
Family's
really
important, but not for me. Not for me, or not for me. If not for you, if I have a deadline, I need you to that's where you do really have to be human as that leader. And this is all easy when things are easy. Like all these 10 laws all make perfect sense. Add pressure, add timeline pressure, budget pressure, life pressure. These things can slip really, really quickly. And I think that's probably, even yourself when you were in this and you'd catch yourself slipping, or maybe someone that you really trusted would call you out. You're like, I guess, how did you keep yourself in check all these years, Paul? Because I bet you didn't nail these all the time.
Oh no!
Or maybe you did. I'm being bold. I'm being very presumptuous with my statement.
You're not being bold at all. You're being a man who's actually lived life just like me, and you walk the road. and it's easy, like you say, to look at it and go, yeah, I didn't quite do that one so well. And I had two to three, let's say three really, really good, trusted people, like all through my career,
Nice.
long term. And you know what? If Paul was being a dick, I would.
They'd call it
They
out.
wouldn't do it. They would call it out. Not in a big room. We're
Yep.
we're all a little more sensible. But in a private room or over a beer, it's like, that was pretty hard. Like you shouldn't have done that. And then so, you know
Yeah.
what? I think you're right. And it's you you need sometimes somebody who can give you that emperor doesn't have any clothes kind of a moment. And you have to be willing to listen. And sometimes you can listen, sometimes you can't. One of the things that I've learned
Sometimes you're just
is
not
that
ready to hear it, eh, Paul? Sometimes you're not
no,
ready to hear it.
no, you're not. And that's in the heat of a moment or something like that. I've learned even in your own personal life, when you're talking to your kids or your spouse or your good friend, it can be a heat of a moment, and you may want to try to do something. That's not the right time. Better when it's cooler heads are prevailed, and you just say, "Look, I just want to talk to you about this. This is not," because if you do it at a time when stress and anxiety and emotion is high,
Yep.
it's going nowhere. It's just going in flame. It's going to be a flame out. So.
Well, okay, you have to ask yourself, like, what's my outcome here? Is it me to like, I want to jump in, I want to do the thing, or I actually want to help this person get a different outcome? Maybe I should wait. And I've had to catch myself of like, I'm just doing this because I want to do it right now. It's actually not the right timing for that other person. And if it's truly about them, you got to get yourself a check sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Like that.
Yeah, I used to call it being indulgent. I'm like, sometimes I wanted to indulge in it because I was so excited to share this thing I observed. I'm like, not the right time. It's bad timing, Tyler. Just keep your mouth shut. Just park it. Maybe tomorrow. You touched on something that I really love because I had a mentor years ago that kind of caught me on it or called me on it and helped me understand it. Not in front of a room full of people, not in a big scene, but maybe in a quiet room. Like, let that other person also leave with their dignity. And it was a piece of advice I got years ago where I was in a room and there was a confrontation and the person who was defending themselves and the person, they were clearly losing footing. Like they weren't right. Their argument was falling apart. And my friend, who's a senior player, just was like, okay, we're good. And he just dialed it back. And I was like, oh, you didn't go in for the kill. And he looked at me, he goes, Tyler, always let them leave with their dignity. Like what would be the win? For me to be right? At this point, we all knew where we were going. Just let it shut down. And I was like, oh, late 20s, early 30s, Tyler was like, oh, I see. This isn't a take no prisoners. This is silly. We're all on the same team tomorrow. And it always stuck with me. Let them leave with their dignity.
I like it. It's a good way of looking at it.
Don't be a dick is another way to say it.
It's so true, right?
I spent a lot of time thinking leadership was a dictatorship, and I learned very early in my career that that was wrong. I watched the wrong movies and read the wrong books.
Yeah. Now, there are times when you have to do hard things, like anything else in life, and you gotta have the fortitude to do those things.
But if you've built the trust and you've built the rapport, it also gives you a little bit of permission that like in a leadership role, that doesn't mean you get to abdicate. You still have to make hard decisions. But if you've got the trust and the relationship with your team, most of them will also get it, in my experience.
Yeah. You don't have
and vice versa for yourself. Oftentimes we're in a situation where, even as a vendor to a client, the client will be acting a certain way. And I'm like, I'm in service of them and I got to give them some grace because I know they're not really like this. So they're probably under some pressure. And that was a phone call I didn't enjoy, but we're just going to let that one, it's just sometimes shit happens.
Yep. Totally 100%. So that's good.
Paul,
so that's
I really
basically the
appreciate
rules.
it. I love it. And thanks for the share. And thanks for taking the time to think about your thoughts. I always joke people like, oh, what's the best podcast guest? I'm like, it's just people that have spent a little time going, how do I think about a certain thing? And writing a book really forces you to think about your thoughts.
Oh yeah. More than I've ever been. I was much more organized than I've ever been.
That's very cool. And are you retired, Paul? Are you still in the game or a game or what game or whatever game you choose to play?
Yeah, like
retired is a weird word, isn't it?
It is a weird word. I think you just have to always have some kind of goal or some routine. And so right
structure.
now, my family has always been in sort of junior oil companies, and in the last 5 years, I've taken a much higher degree of active role in it, in operations. So it's a daily sort of thing, and I enjoy it. It's a very different perspective. I worked in major oil. Now I'm in minor oil, turning pipe at like small batteries in Saskatchewan. And it's been a lot of fun, a lot of work, different challenges. So that keeps me on my toes. It's not a full-time job, but it does keep me on my toes.
Yeah.
The writing of the book was certainly something that was a passion for, and I really, really enjoyed that. Still trying to keep active, with from friends, different activities, whether it's running, triathlons, things like that, just to
Nice.
keep the body moving. So, and just enjoying time with my family. Being able to
Back
go
to rule 9 and
visit
10, 9 and 10.
them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Right, going back. I mean, my daughter, 4 grandchildren in Scotland, so we try to get out there at least once a year. We try to get together. The second daughter is really highly motivated to do Disney not triathlons, Disney half marathons and
Okay, very
10K
cool.
races. So
So it sounds like
we
there's a lot going on to keep you busy. That's
oh
awesome.
yeah. So I mean, I think sometimes I wonder how I ever actually got a full-time job, but um, you know.
Life expands to fit the time available, right? Mhm.
The beautiful thing about the book is a lot of people reach out to me and just want to reconnect. And they say, "Oh, I read the book
It's awesome.
again. I remember those years. You want to go for a coffee, and it's just nice to have that communication. A couple of people asked me to, speak to their teams, just one-on-one, and I'm always happy
Nice.
to do that because it's a form of give back, but it's just nice. It's
Well,
just
it
stay in
keeps you
touch,
engaged. Yeah, I love it. No,
and
it's a
the world's changing.
it is, and I think we're all looking. People have never felt less overwhelmed, and there never has been more things to think about. But the dynamics of management and interhuman, how we act with each other, it hasn't really changed that much. And the royal we, can always be better at it, in my opinion, especially as leaders and managers.
I think so. So,
Kudos for
yeah,
that.
like a university professors used to say, what they do in university is they teach you how to teach yourself, right? And management is a little bit like that. So, if I can have helped just a little bit to help them, always learn, always evolve. The situation, as in piloting, changes every minute.
It does. It
98%,
does.
it's usually very boring. 2% sheer terror.
And where you rely very heavily on your checklist, absolutely, absolutely.
You
And
do.
you rise, you don't rise, but you fall to the level of your training. That's I think
Yeah.
aviation or any kind of intensity like that. I think management, if we took a little bit more time on the preparation side of it, things could go a lot better,
Mhm.
right? Mhm.
I think
Well,
so.
Paul, thanks for coming
100%.
on. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for the work you did to put
Yeah.
it out there. As someone who has written a book recently, I have a lot of respect, and I always knew it was hard, but now I did it, and the
Yeah.
time it takes and the dedication to really, and also putting something out there to the world, going, "Hey, am I nuts? Like, do other people
Yeah.
agree? Is this just Paul's or Tyler's crazy thoughts? Who knows?"
Yeah.
But
You
having the
do.
courage to put it out there in the world is key. Mm.
No, no, it was really a joy to do. Surprisingly, very satisfying, which I would, recommend for people. It is, and it is good to organize your thoughts and really
It
think
is.
about that.
So Amazon.ca, Hitchhiking Through Management, Moore's 10
Yep.
Laws for
Or
Successful Leadership. I'm
Amazon.ca,
assuming, can you find it
Indigo as
anywhere?
well.
That's Indigo as well. Fabulous. Yeah.
Indigo.ca, yeah, as well. So I mean, it's generally I wasn't looking for a publisher to like do a major release. So it's not
Yeah,
really any books, but self-publishing is very easy to do these days. You learn
it
the whole
is. It
process
lowers
on
the
that.
barrier. It lowers the
Yeah.
barrier. Mm.
Yeah, you can get it on Kindle as well, and I might even actually next year do an audio of it because I think a
We
lot of
need to
people have
compare
given me
notes because
feedback.
it's on my list as well. I just haven't got around. I
Yeah,
just was like, I'm going to park this for a while. I'll circle back. But yeah, I don't.
yeah,
I've got the same as you. I've got the hardcover, the paperback, but I don't have the audio yet. So we're on a
yeah.
similar journey on that one. Mm.
Oh, cool.
I
Well,
don't know
maybe
if I
we'll
want to.
talk later about that.
We'll compare notes. Absolutely,
Yeah,
Paul.
that's
Thanks
right.
so much for coming on. Thanks for your candor and thanks for the
Oh,
work
you're
you do. I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Oh, Tyler, it was a wonderful chat. Thank you.